they'd say, Heather, teach me how to dance. Now, I've never danced in front of them in my entire life, like never. I'm not a good dancer, so I wouldn't do that. Yet one of my close friends just turned to me and said, Heather, teach me how to dance. Now, why would she do this? And I'm not saying, you know, being known as good dancers is like a negative thing. To me, that's a very positive thing, and I think that's a very beautiful thing. But when it doesn't apply to me, and that's how my identity should be revolved around, doesn't really make me feel like a good Black person. It doesn't. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Heather Louise, and today I'm going to talk about how to build your self-esteem, specifically for Black women. So if you are interested in this information, definitely stay tuned. But if you're not, no hard feelings. You can definitely exit this video. I did share a couple videos created on race-based trauma. In one of those videos, I did say it was really important to focus on building a positive self-image in order to help you cope with race-based trauma. And I really think that this is so important, and I definitely, after doing all my research and also putting some things into practice, it has definitely helped me. So I'm hoping that these things that I have to share with you will definitely be helpful for you as well. For those of you who don't know, I have my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I had to do a research presentation where I studied Black people and their self-esteem. And the reason why that I did this is because, obviously, as you can tell, I am a Black woman. And growing up, I really struggled hard with my self-esteem. You know, just comparing myself to my peers constantly who were basically all white, and just seeing how they would just be so confident in themselves. And I'm just thinking like, okay, why am I so different? Why? If I'm growing up in the same area as them, if I'm going to the same school as them, and even in a lot of cases have, you know, the same opportunities as them and maybe even more, why am I so far behind in the self-esteem department? So I really wanted to do some research because, you know, at that time, I think it was maybe like 3 years ago, you know, I was like, okay, why am I still struggling with this aspect of my life? From what I discovered through research that other people have done was really, really interesting. So what my hypothesis was that a Black individual's home environment really impacts their self-esteem, because when you look at other mental illness, a really important factor in a lot of those things and a lot of development of those things happening is that their home environment was one of the #1 influencers on who they are, why they feel a certain way, why they believe certain things. And when you actually even break it down a little bit further, is that a lot of the criteria for a lot of mental illness, I don't know if you guys know this, but it's definitely not based on Black people. A lot of the criteria and a lot of the research was based on white men. If you are a Black person who is suffering from self-esteem issues, you know, one of the #1 things that you can do is, you know, go see a therapist, which is something that I did in order to build my self-esteem. Well, if a lot of the criteria and a lot of the techniques and a lot of things that we studied in school is, you know, for white men specifically, or even just to generalize white people, it's not really helpful. It wouldn't really apply to me, which it didn't. It honestly didn't. So I decided that I'm going to have to figure things out for myself, which is why I did the research. And what I discovered is 2 things. And I'm really not going to get all into depth of the research because it's very complicated. I'm just going to give you a short, brief summary of what the research said. The 2 things that I discovered is that for Black individuals, and specifically for Black women, your self-esteem is influenced by friendships with other Black people, and also if you had good cultural socialization in your home environment. So I just want to break those 2 things down, starting with cultural socialization. If you look at other mental health concerns, you can always take a look at the person's home environment, so how they grew up, the relationship with their mother and father is really can be an influencer of, the development of their mental health concern. So the research that I have done doesn't say that, a Black person's home environment isn't an influencer at all. It definitely is very helpful, but their cultural socialization in that home environment is the missing piece to this. So I grew up in a home where my parents were very, I guess, they would always instill things like, okay, Black is beautiful, you're strong, you're a Black woman, you're this, you're that. And they seemed to really have pride within themselves, yet I still struggled with, those self-esteem issues. So what the research is saying is that because my parents, they did not tell me about where my family came from, we really didn't do a lot of cultural, I guess, traditions within the home. That is why I struggled more than my peers. So, I would have peers who would be like, okay, well, I am Irish, and these are what Irish people do, and they would really be proud of that. And, that would definitely help to build their self-esteem and say, okay, I know who I am, I know where I come from, and I know the types of things that my people do. They had a group where they could relate to, they can identify with, and they could see positive things with. However, I didn't. Okay, I am Black, and my parents really didn't tell me a lot of things like, okay, this is our Black culture, this is this. Yeah, I saw a lot of things growing up in social media that would tell me this is what Black people do, this is what they have to look like, this is what they eat, this is how they act, this is how they behave, these are types of jobs that they get. A lot of those things, unfortunately, were very negative. Now, some of those things are great and wonderful, but as a young adolescent and, really taking that in, it really did scar me and it really did hurt my self-esteem. Also, if you are a Black person and, you actually had a different home environment and you grew up with, your parents really educating you about who you are and really having the importance of, your traditions and your culture imprinted on you, in the research it says that you are better off. You have a chance, to not only have higher self-esteem, but to succeed academically. So this is why it's really important, if you did not have that growing up like me, that you really do some research about who you are. Maybe even take a genetics test, or maybe even just look around in your life in general and see what really speaks to you. You don't have to do something just because you are a Black person or African American. You don't have to do specific things. So the second influence for a Black individual's self-esteem is their positive relationships with other Black people. So looking at me, growing up, like I said, really didn't have a lot of Black friends. And also with, social media back then, even just like TV, I really did not watch a lot of actors who were Black women. I really didn't see myself represented in a positive way, with a lot of, all these like negative stereotypes about Black people that, would just circulate, honestly, like in my school. I can even just think back to one time where one of my friends would, constantly ask me about random songs, maybe like rap songs, hip hop songs, or like, they'd say, Heather, teach me how to dance. Now, I've never danced in front of them in my entire life, like never. I'm not a good dancer, so I wouldn't do that. Yet one of my close friends just turned to me and said, Heather, teach me how to dance. Now, why would she do this? And I'm not saying, being known as good dancers is like a negative thing. To me, that's a very positive thing, and I think that's a very beautiful thing. But when it doesn't apply to me, and that's how my identity should be revolved around, doesn't really make me feel like a good Black person. It doesn't really help me, you know, build positive self-esteem about myself when I can't do what people expect me to do. I can't do the positive thing that, you know, Black people might be even admired for. All these negative messages that I am just getting day in and day out growing up, that can really impact my self-esteem, especially when, you know, I didn't surround myself, or really didn't even have the opportunity to surround myself with Black peers or build positive relationships with other Black people, or even have media representation of Black actors, Black women that I can look up to as role models. I really couldn't see myself in a lot of different people who did things that I was also interested in. And what the research did is that they kind of tested the self-esteem between Black individuals who went to HBCUs and also with Black individuals who didn't. And what they found is that the Black people who went to HBCUs had greater levels of self-esteem than Black people who didn't, because they are surrounded by mainly other Black peers who were unique in their own different way. So they definitely were surrounded by people who were very intelligent, very smart, who they really looked up to, who they really admired for, you know, their unique talents and gifts, or just for who they are. So they were able to build more positive relationships with those kind of people. Whereas if you went to a school and really had limited Black people, even when I went to college, like I still, like in my classrooms, did not have, like, it wasn't majority Black people, it was maybe like another Black person in that classroom. And, you know, I really didn't have a lot of opportunities to build those friendships. I would really strive and look out to build 5 close, positive relationships with Black people. And if you really can't do that, because look, even still, I still live in the area surrounded by predominantly white people, it is really difficult for me to build those relationships. Just really take a look at the content that you are putting on your social media. I even looked yesterday, I looked at my Instagram and found that I was only following maybe like 5 or 6 Black actors or celebrities, and you know, and that was out of maybe like 150 people. So if I'm constantly being like on my Instagram and just scrolling and just seeing a whole bunch of white faces, I can't really see myself in those people because they don't look like me. And you know, that's a problem. You know, that has to change. So in a sense, we do have to work a little bit harder to seek out those Black role models for us, or seek out Black positive relationships. Please let me know if you have had a similar experience as me, or maybe even a different experience. I would love to hear your story. And if you like this content, then don't forget to subscribe, and I will talk with you soon.